Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, Google, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
and Peter.
Episode number 5, recorded on January 8th, 2019. Title, The Cloud Pod, now 50% cheaper. Hey guys, how's it going? What are you drinking tonight, Peter?
Hey, I ran out of bourbon, so tonight we're having a little Templeton rye.
Nice.
One ice cube.
I'm having a lovely glass of ice water.
I have the lime mint soda water.
Awesome.
Oh, very nice.
That sounds boring and boring.
It needs extra flavoring of some kind.
I think it's the advantage of the recording location, since you're recording from your home and I am not.
Yeah, good point.
We do have the keg over there, though.
We do have the keg. Yeah, we might need to tap into that for these recordings.
I think so, yeah. We could bring a guest in, as long as he brings in 2 beers.
That'd be awesome. Let's get to the news, guys. So first, Amazon had Amazon actually hasn't confirmed this, but according to TechCrunch and CNBC, Amazon reportedly bought Cloud Endure for approximately $200 to $250 million, depending on which article you believe, which is an Israeli-based DR company that provides DR as a service, backup, migration technology. And so that broke this morning. So Amazon, thank you for that, although you're not confirming. But it's interesting news.
It's weird, right? It's something that people have been asking for from Amazon for the longest time because they didn't support SnapMirror type backups for EBS, and database replication was all on the app teams, all the DB teams, and this is like the OS layer replication for like really short RPOs for failover between regions.
I saw Cloud Endure. There was a blog post a little while ago from Amazon specifically talking about their migration capabilities. So I have a feeling that although Cloud Endure probably has some pretty cool DR functionality, I'm kind of betting that Amazon, if this is going through, is more interested in their migration tools. Obviously, migration to AWS.
I kind of wonder if they're going to terminate support for the other cloud providers or whether they're going to keep it around.
Right. Yeah. As a target, not necessarily as a source.
I think the interesting analysis on this is that, they're looking to help customers be able to move data to and from the cloud in a DR capability, and that customers are typically very interested in resiliency and providing that resiliency. And so if this can simplify that story and make them look like they're a good player between Microsoft and Google, maybe this is a interesting story for them, as well as it keeps them out of hot water with any antitrust conversations that might come up around the cloud. You're not that locked in. We have this great tool you can use to move between the cloud providers.
I guess one of the challenges we've had moving large databases and things is simply we can't take the time to use Snowball, and replication you can't always use unless you take the service down to turn on the right kind of logging. So I guess maybe this is a migration enabler for them.
I think it's great for migration. I mean, when you look at like data replication, you'd think Amazon's going to want to do that. Like, why limit yourself to a tool that is like limited by the public API instead of getting under the covers like Amazon does for Aurora, right? Where it's replicating sort of at the product level between AZs. Why not extend that to regions instead of a tool like this? It feels to me more like DMS, data migration service, is going to turn into migration service.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely see that coming down the path. And it's a good acquisition for them. They raised over $18 million from companies like Dell, VMware, Mitsui, Infosys, and Magma Venture Partners. So $200 million exit. I assume they had hit product market fit. And I'm curious to see how this turns into an Amazon service in the future. So the other big announcement that Amazon blessed us with this morning was around Fargate, and Fargate being their fully managed container runtime engine. So instead of running ECS hosts or Kubernetes nodes, you can basically just declare your task or container type, put it into Fargate, and then you would execute it based on the number of CPUs and the number of memory gigabytes you wanted to have allocated to the container. And for as long as that was running, you would basically get that benefit, but at a really high price tag. And now this morning, they've announced up to a 50% price reduction in some of the form factors, depending on CPU and memory. Typically, the cost savings were more on the memory allocation side than the CPU, based on the charts. But really a fantastic announcement, and really brings Fargate to a whole different level of adoption, I think.
Still pretty expensive, but reading the announcement, they said the thing that enabled them to lower the cost was by switching to Firecracker, so they can speed up deployments.
Well, it was one of the things they mentioned in the Firecracker presentation was that it was going to lower costs of their container platform and Fargate in particular. So it seems sort of like they wanted to announce this maybe at reInvent and didn't quite make the cut.
Yeah, it's kind of the direction they always go. They start with these managed services, and they're not going to lose a bunch of money on them. But it seems like the target is get the price really back down really close to the AWS primitive resources that it's consuming, and just give people other options on how to consume them.
I was looking at some of the numbers, and when I did the first Fargate calculation, I basically just took an EC2 instance and then basically determined if I had this number of containers or this amount of memory allocated to them, this is what it would cost me to run those in Fargate versus what it would cost for the EC2 host. And so that worked out to be, significantly more expensive than just running an EC2 host in my previous math. Now, when I ran the same calculation today, it is still a bit more expensive on an on-demand perspective, but the curve is much closer on an RI purchase. So you see that it's slightly cost beneficial to you if you were doing Fargate over doing RIs. And then if you're doing spot instances, of course, ECS instances are still significantly cheaper than going with this solution. But overall, I think it really starts changing the conversation about containers in a big way. And I'm really excited to see where people go with this.
If you were going RI for RI, how close was the pricing that you got?
Within 6 to 9%.
Oh, awesome. So that line's almost straight up with sort of the RDS premium.
Yeah, it does, actually. I didn't think about that, but it totally lines up with the RDS premium. All right. So then right before the new year, we didn't cover this at the time, but we're going to cover it now. Cloudera and Hortonworks closed their merger. And of course, Cloudera and Hortonworks are the two biggest manufacturers of software in the Hadoop EMR space. And the interesting thing about it was this money quote. The big competitor for us is Amazon with their house offerings. Cloudera CEO Tom Riley told CNBC in an interview last month in preparation of the deal's closure, we're gearing up to take on Amazon, which really kind of caught my eye. It was an interesting comment.
Are they running servers? Did I miss something? How are they competing with Amazon?
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, would you really want to separate your data lake EMR Hadoop service to a SaaS business that they're potentially running versus having that data close to my compute infrastructure? It doesn't quite make sense. I am curious to see where they end up going with this and why they feel that's their competitor to beat. But in the machine learning space and big data, Google's just as big a competitor as Amazon is. So it's weird that they're specifically targeting Amazon.com.
Well, Amazon, I think, just based on their market penetration in that area, right? Not necessarily the technical comparison to GCP, but I'm sure Amazon is way ahead from a standpoint of workloads. But like EMR, I don't know. EMR runs Hortonworks. I don't see the competitive. I don't see the decision people are going to make unless the comment is Amazon is going to develop their own proprietary sort of slant on Hadoop to make it more integrated or work better on Amazon. I don't know.
Well, Cloudera and Hortonworks basically competing for the same, some of the same business. So now they don't have to waste their money fighting each other anymore. They can save that, I guess.
That makes more sense. That makes that's a classic great reason, right?
Well, I do look forward to the eventual acquisition of this product by Oracle, which is it's clearly next path after this is if they can't compete against Amazon, who will buy them? And I think that next most likely people is probably Oracle.
What about IBM?
Maybe IBM, but this definitely feels more like an Oracle play. Database, big data, Oracle's wheelhouse. Maybe IBM would, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like they both took a lot of damage to each other's reputations by attacking each other for a long time. And
yeah, well, their stocks didn't do too well. Yeah, on the announcement,
they were valued at $5.2 billion when the merger was announced, and as of the close of the merger, they're only worth $3 billion.
Wow,
that's painful.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Well, I do hope to see them maybe recover. We do have some friends over there who are anxiously hoping that that's a successful merger. So I do wish them all the best, and I do hope that they work this out. But it's going to be interesting times for them in the next quarter or two as they now apparently gear up to compete against AWS. Speaking of AWS, Stay up to date with the latest AWS news every Monday morning with the Last Week in AWS newsletter. Corey Quinn gathers the news from AWS, strips out the stuff that nobody cares about, and makes fun of what's left. Subscribe today at lastweekinaws.com. Snark delivered to your inbox. Less fog, more cloud. So the other fun story, and we don't talk about this very often, but Corey does in his newsletter, basically the S3 bucket of shame award that he gives in his newsletter. But this one crosses a threshold that I think we have to comment on it. So Guardzilla, which is apparently the maker of IoT security cameras, apparently put access keys into their source code that they run on the device to upload your security camera footage to their S3 buckets, and those buckets are publicly facing with that key, and you can download anyone's security camera footage and see what's on them. So if you have a Guardzilla security camera, I would recommend you immediately unplug it, as they have yet to respond to this vulnerability. They have been very quiet, and they have not talked about what their solution to this mistake is going to be. But this is a big loss of trust in this company, in my opinion.
Well, if I was AWS, I would almost forcibly turn off access to those buckets just to preserve my own face. Letting that customer data just sit there bleeding out to whoever wants to download it isn't good for anybody, especially Amazon.
I'm still baffled because you'd look at the Guardzilla's product and you think, okay, if it's going to kill their company, because it's going to take them so long to put out a fix that they'll be dead before, if they turn everything off, they'll be dead before they can put the fix out. I would get it, but this is, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is as simple as changing the permissions allowed to that key to just put only and not get.
Right.
This is a 5-minute fix.
I mean, that's a 5-minute quick fix, but you still need to do it properly, and you need to have dual authorization on both sides, and a handshake occurs to actually get a unique key per device. I mean, that's where you want to go
for sure.
But now, it's a quick fix in the short term.
People are downloading right now. People are downloading other people's literally footage from inside their house, and it's a 5-minute fix to stop that from happening. A 5-minute patch to stop that from happening, and they haven't done it. That's incredible.
And the bigger crime is that they haven't admitted it. There's no mention of it on their website in any way. All I see is this stock photo of this man holding this baby in the air. I don't see anything in their press releases or anything that they are aware of this issue. And it's just really shameful. Like I can't imagine that this isn't going to cost them a ton of money in fines too.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, how long have they been around for? Are they a big company, you think? Or I assume it's cheap commoditized hardware with some cheap UI kind of.
Well, I see when their Twitter account came to be. It came around in 2014. They're based out of St. Louis. It's very interesting because most of social media is actually very quiet. There's really been nothing really posted since June of 2018. I wonder how real this company actually is, or if it's sort of gone belly up and they're just kind of working through something that's bigger than this. The fact that it's so silent and there's just been no acknowledgement just really blows my mind.
Great branding opportunity for all the larger companies out there who are selling maybe similar feature sets at a higher price to say, do you really want to trust a company that you haven't heard of?
Yeah, I had never heard of them until this flaw came out either. So definitely unplug your device if you have one. That's all I can say. And if their website has a way to delete your data, I would do that too.
Exactly.
That's just if you can't delete your own data with the access keys they embedded in the device.
We could probably go up and delete everybody's. I wonder if access is enabled with those keys as well.
So moving on to better news, Google purchased DORA, which is the DevOps Research and Assessment Foundation. This is a company started by Jez Humble and Gene Kim. Basically comes in and helps companies evaluate your DevOps practices, how well you're doing against benchmark companies. They produce the annual DevOps report and kind of the status of the industry as a whole. So this is an interesting acquisition. Definitely looks like Google is trying to get more DevOps expertise and more thought leadership in this space. And I'm glad these guys found a good home. It seems like a good acquisition.
I feel like Google internally probably has that expertise, but DORA brings this productized offering, I think, that they can go offer to their customers who are, not making the progress they would hope to have been making in adopting the cloud. And so I was thinking that that's what Google's looking to do, is just to help accelerate that process for their customers who, they got buy-in from executives that they want to move to the cloud, and they do an executive, an EA, and they open a bunch of open accounts and start projects, and then no workloads seem to be moving, and they can't figure out why. It's like, yeah, maybe we can help them on the organizational side to help them get over those non-technical hurdles.
Is Gene Kim still involved in the project?
I believe he is. He, the annual report came out in 2018. It was heavily sponsored by Google, actually, the 2018 version of the State of DevOps report. But, he's on the talk circuit. He does a lot of conferences, and he presents his data and is trying to get companies to really move this needle. I don't know if he's completely in the day-to-days of DORA, but he's definitely associated to it in a strong way, and I think he's still part of it. I think Jez is also somewhat associated with it. I don't know if he's a full-time job, but he's definitely heavily involved as well. So speaking of DORA and Gene Kim, have either of you read his fantastic book, The Phoenix Project?
Many times.
I read The Goal.
Called The Phoenix Project is based on The Goal, and it covers an IT organization who's going through some rapid change in their organization, needing to, missing deadlines, having problems with product, stock markets beating them up, all the things that seem to happen at all the companies I work at for some strange reason. But overall, it's an interesting roadmap of how to think about DevOps and cloud security and these things, these new practices we talk about in the DevOps world. And really, it's a fantastic exploration and a fun narrative style to tell you, taking a different approach, looking at theory of constraints, addressing issues with production and how you can do more deployments and have less dependencies on single players in your organization. It's really fantastic.
I liked how he kind of leads you through it in a way which makes you feel like you've discovered it for yourself.
I still believe he works at every company I've worked at. And I've read the book 3 or 4 times now. And it's interesting to me how every time I get something new out of it that is related to something I'm doing at my current job or some cultural change I'm trying to push through in my organization. So definitely, if you haven't listened to the book, I would definitely take a listen to it on audible.com. You can download your free audiobook, including The Phoenix Project, at audibletrial.com/thecloudpod.
All right. I'm committing. I'm going to do it.
The most interesting announcement of the week comes from our friends over at Microsoft and GitHub, who've announced that your public repos of bad code can now be made private, as they now offer you the ability to make your public repos private for free for up to 3 collaborators, which is, I think, a fantastic move. And I can now remove all of my embarrassing code from the internet.
I love the way this was reported with the evil Mr. Burns.
Yes. The headline on the Register was fantastic. This is the final straw, evil Microsoft. Making private GitHub's repos free. You've gone too far. That is fantastic.
I mean, it pretty much should say free private repos for personal use only, because there's not too much you could do with 2 collaborators, but it's still super cool.
Sometimes I don't want my personal side project to be out in the internet, and I don't want to pay $7 a month for it. So what I would typically have done is, used a GitHub plugin for Dropbox, so that I can just basically write that to a Dropbox through this plugin, because you can't do it natively.
Well, I do say that if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product.
Nice.
Well, I mean, if they want my code, more power to them. I'm sure they have better engineers than I who can give them better code.
Yeah, I guess storage costs are pretty low nowadays. I don't imagine the number of GitHub users who will take advantage of this will move the needle in any way.
I mean, I feel like it's all sort of this trap, right? It's all a Venus flytrap to get you into the Microsoft ecosystem. We bought GitHub. Now we're making integrated into Visual Studio Code. We're giving you repos for free, and then the next thing you know, you're running a .NET application on Azure. And I don't know what happened. That's how I see it going down.
Where are my files turned to ASPX files? What happened?
And let's move on to the amazing Peter for the lightning round.
Awesome. All right. Windows Server 2019 AMIs are now available on AWS.
What's different about 2019 versus 2018, Peter?
No idea. Am I supposed to know?
No, I don't know either.
Oh.
2019 has better support for smaller containers. So now if you want to deploy a Windows container, it doesn't take 8 gig anymore. You can, it's only 7.
Yeah, it's only 7.
It's only 7. Fantastic.
All those are great, though. I mean, those things, supporting that stuff quickly makes it super easy for your customers to not worry that they're going to be a year behind the curve.
Speaking of DevOps, when I think of DevOps in the cloud, I think of Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn has been around since 2008. They've been on the forefront of cloud enablement and have delivered powerful transformations for hundreds of clients, from startups to Fortune 500, including highly regulated industries. They were early visionaries and practitioners of using code to automate infrastructure and operations to drive up cloud efficiencies while driving down costs. Terraform, Ansible, Jenkins, AWS, Azure, and GCP. Go to fogops.io/thecloudpod to learn more about their FogOps services and sign up for a free, well-architected framework review.
I think it's pretty cool. All right. Parallel Cluster is now available in Sweden.
I mean, if I ever needed to parallelize my Stockholm syndrome, this is the way to do it.
Do you feel trapped by this product?
I do.
Awesome.
You will do all projects in HPC partitions.
I love these products where this product is available at no additional charge. You just pay for the resources you need to use to run your applications. Join us.
Don't look at the data transfer cost. Don't look at that. That's the wizard behind the curtain.
Next, Alexa announces Skill Builder Beta Cert.
I didn't know that I needed to be certified to prove I could write a very simple Alexa script. It's a weird choice. I mean, I guess for people doing more complicated work with Alexa, it's interesting, but I don't think I'm gonna get this one, guys. I'm sorry.
Alexa, test my skills. Maybe it'll be a voice activated test.
Alexa, make Jonathan take my test for me.
Next, WAF. AWS WAF now includes a monitoring dashboard.
I mean, as weird as this one sounds, I am glad it now supports IP version 6, which seemed to be a pretty big miss in WAF before this, but yeah, okay.
I know. I mean, how many guys are you going to have sitting there looking at billions of packets going back and forth, though? Like, I think dashboards for people are just the wrong solution for this.
I mean, Amazon has only like three security CISOs on call on a rotation on any given day. If I recall what the CISO said at the presentation, where he blew my mind with how few people they have in security.
Yeah, but they all have pre-purchased tickets to the Bahamas for when it really hits the fan.
All right, Project Bali. Researchers at Microsoft are working on a new privacy tool that would give users the ability to control what happens to the data that's collected about them online.
Well, no, this isn't just online. This is specifically collected by Microsoft, and the fact that somebody had to think about researching that people may want to keep their data private is just it's just bizarre to me. Like, I'm sure this all came out of the GDPR stuff, and they had to build these tools for internal transparency. But I don't know. Maybe it'll be a good starting point for other people who need to build the same kind of thing, and maybe it'll be a kind of a kickoff to the whole blockchain-based personal information thing. You can keep all the information on your own blockchain and then grant access to who you want to have it. It could be interesting.
If you've ever done the where you go to Facebook into your settings and you say, please download everything you know about me, and then you go through that data and you become horrified at how bad Facebook knows you. I would sort of be curious to know what Microsoft knows about me. So if this ends up in a way that I can download all the data that Microsoft has about me, I'd be curious to know what they know.
I think what's interesting about this is not just the data that you've given them, but the data that they've inferred or derived about you based on the other stuff as well.
Yeah, that's what you get in the Facebook download too. And that was I have a Facebook page that I use to basically support the CloudPod page, but I don't really use Facebook because after the tool, I have no trust of them ever. So, yeah. Again,
if you don't pay for the product, you are the product.
Yeah.
And in Facebook's case, you are definitely the product.
All right, next. EMR announces a 99.9% SLA.
So they're announcing that they're GA.
GA. How does
Yay, GA. We should have a GA party.
Yeah. And that's it for the lightning round.
Yay!
Who's the winner, Peter?
Goodness, I wasn't keeping score, and I got to get better at that. Next time, I promise, I'm going to actually give scores next time.
Well, as a current champion, I feel like you still have to pick one, even though you didn't properly score it.
And just for that, I'm picking Jonathan.
Oh,
and it's
dang it!
It's mostly out of spite.
Well,
fantastic.
Maybe the previous week's winner should get to decide who this week's winner is. Passing on the torch.
No. I decide. I'm the.
Yeah, it's just the Japanese.
Lord. Yeah, Templeton Rye.
The Templeton Rye, yes. All right, let's move on to our new segment, Cool Tools by Jonathan.
You know what? I'm still on the Alexa announces the skill builder thing. You know, you need 6 months programming experience, and you have to have published one skill to get the certification. That's just like a really poor barrier to entry. Anyway.
Well, I mean, if you publish a skill, it means it has to meet Amazon's requirements for what a skill could be. But then, does the testing center validate that you actually have a skill in the marketplace? Because those guys, as much as I like them, they don't do a lot of pre-checks.
No.
Dude, those testing centers are great. I was there once, and the guy next to me in the cube next to me, taking obviously a different test, is reading under his breath the questions and the answers out loud. For
fantastic.
It was terrible.
Was you on speakerphone to somebody answering the questions?
I know. I was like, what's happening? And then he kept doing it. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to pass my test because of this guy. I'm going to be so pissed off.
I've done both of mine at reInvent, and they are very strict about the noise in the reInvent testing center. So if that's what you need to do, I would do it at reInvent personally. But then I do know that I did my DevOps Pro, and I passed the gentleman to my left and the gentleman to my right, and I don't know who they were, but bless their souls, they both failed. And so when I was going through the questions, and the guy on the right fails, and he walks off dejected, and the guy on the left walks off dejected, and then you go through the thing, and then of course Amazon says at the end of the thing, please fill out this survey to tell us what you thought about the test. And I'm like, I don't care about the test right now. I just want to know if I passed. And then finally it comes up and says, you successfully. And it took everything in my being not to stand up and hoot as loud as possible at that moment. So, but yes, the testing centers could that are not at reInvent could use some work.
They could use some work, although it was my own fault, because then after looking around, exasperated, trying to figure out what I'm going to do because I can't read my own questions, right in front of me was a set of those noise canceling earphones headset. And I picked that up and I put it on, and I was pretty much okay from there on out.
Yeah, I had a pair of those things once, and it seemed to remove all the background noise, all the white noise, which usually helps you drown out the other noise. And people's voices would just come through those things as clear as day.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Well. All right, so we got a new section this week for Cool Tools.
You can come up with a better name. You can workshop it. I'm fine. Utility of the week.
Utility of the week. Tool of the week. Again.
We're gonna have to avoid the word tool.
I think so. I fear we're kind of like descending into the Beavis and Butthead kind of. There's a couple of times in the last episode where we're all kind of laughing together and thought, "Wow, that just sounds like MTV from 1992."
He said tool.
I can't wait to see how this is edited.
Yeah, exactly. Just put it totally somewhere else, right in the middle of the lightning round. He said tool.
This is what the outtakes are for. This is where I'm going to index everything. The first is the AWS Console Recorder, tweeted by a few people, including Jeff Barr, over the past couple of weeks. This is a Chrome plugin. It lets you browse through the AWS console. It records all of your actions and generates a CloudFormation template at the end of the session. Any resources you create manually in the console appear as resources in the CloudFormation template.
I think it's a great starting place for some people. CloudFormation could be somewhat intimidating to get you into the Amazon ecosystem, and learning the formerly JSON syntax, now YAML syntax, is a lot of lifting. And so if I can, click into a GUI and go do what I know how to do in the console, and then get kind of a good starting place, it's a good training tool. So I mean, I don't know if I would use it for production, but I think from training perspective, I think it's a great starter for people to understand how what I'm doing in the GUI translates to an API call or to a CLI command, and I can see that represented. I think it's a nice improvement. It's a nice option for people who especially coming from the Windows family, maybe who are not as familiar with automation technologies, it's a good move.
Yeah, I was trying to pick some holes in this and try and find the negative side. I was like, oh, well, you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be creating CloudFormation templates like this. And then I think, well, why? It's just an alternate input mechanism instead of typing and just using a mouse. And I can see it. I can see it being pretty useful, pretty efficient.
Yeah, but
I mean, Amazon has a similar tool called CloudFormer that you basically run an EC2 instance in your account, and then it scans what's in your account and then produces CloudFormation code that's kind of garbage, and it doesn't work very well. So I mean, if this even is can sort of meet the same need without the overhead of running an EC2 instance to figure out what's in my account, I still think it's a nice improvement.
Yeah, I think training, it's about learning what I need to write in a CloudFormation template in the future, because I mean, the resources that you create aren't going to be under control of a stack. So if you were going to use that, you'd tear down and rebuild from the template, which is fine. But most of the times when we're moving to templates, we have higher goals than just very explicitly defining specific sets of resources. We want to parameterize things. We want to do lookups. We want to make it smart. And these by definition can't be smart because they don't know the context. They don't know what you're trying to accomplish. But from a standpoint of learning real quick, what would it look like if I wanted a CloudFormation template that had a auto scaling group and especially you do like who learned the hard way how to do a role, where you don't, in the console, you just create a role in IAM, but in a CloudFormation template, you have to create a role, you have to create an instance profile, and then you have to create a policy that allows that profile to assume that role. 3 resources instead of 1. I think it's kind of cool for that.
Did you ever use the CloudFormation designer interface?
I think it's like once you get over the hump, it's so hard to get over the hump using resource blocks to define things that you're visualizing in your head or that you see currently on a topology. Once you get over that hump, it's like the fastest way is just, I know what I want. I'm just going to write the code.
I am a little worried about the fact that there's really only one contributor on this project, and Amazon moves at lightning speed, and I would like to see him continue to build this out. I hope it doesn't lose interest. That's my only hesitation about this is that. And he also wants to do outputs for Photo 3 and Terraform and Troposphere. There's a lot he's asking or wanting to do here, and I do wish him the best of luck. But he's definitely got a long road to hoe.
So, Jonathan, what do you think about the AWS CLI Builder?
I think he's going to suffer the same problem as the console recorder in the end, in that keeping up with the pace of Amazon's changes and keeping these interfaces up to date for all the extensions to the services will be virtually impossible for any single contributor.
Yeah, I mean, you see Terraform, and they do an amazing job at HashiCorp of keeping up with Terraform, but I'm always amazed when they're a couple weeks after a service is announced and they've already integrated it. I couldn't imagine trying to do that as a side project. Couldn't imagine it. But again, this is another one of those tools where super cool for learning how to use the CLI. A lot of the syntax in the CLI, like when you try to use filters, even I could read the documentation 100 times and write it incorrectly 100 times until finally I figure it out. And I think it's a super cool shortcut for if you're stuck getting some weird syntax error. Maybe that's a good way, even if they don't support the thing you want to do yet. At least it can give you a couple of samples, and maybe you can see where you've gone wrong.
I like this tool. I think there's definitely a learning curve for the CLI. I typically have used a tool called AWS-Shell, which actually Amazon, it was sort of a similar project, started out by an individual, and then I think eventually he was acqui-hired into Amazon. He's actually working on the CLI team now, I believe. I think it's good. I wish it was a little more command line driven, because that's where you want to do these things. And do I really want to copy and paste from a browser to a command line? But anything to help people figure these syntax out, because some of these get complicated, especially when you're doing filtering or you're doing some of the other more advanced commands versus just a simple describe instances command. It's nice. I think it has some utility to it. I agree with Jonathan. I think it struggles from the same problem how does it keep up. And it's the guy who runs it or created it, Prasad Damala, who props to this guy. He did a lot of work on this, and I give him props. But he's definitely super passionate about Amazon. He's got 4 certifications according to his website. He's got a bunch of videos on YouTube that he's done around different Amazon components. So he's definitely passionate, and as long as that passion continues to build out this tool, I think it's a good place for new people to start out and start learning Amazon.
I'll tell you what I want. I want a tool where I take the JSON output response from a CLI, highlight a chunk of it, and then automatically generate the awk command to get that out of it.
No, just use JQ.
Or JQ. Excuse me. Yes, JQ. I'm sorry. I was thinking of JQ. I don't know why. Yes, JQ.
You Ruby guys.
No, I'm all over JQ.
I got a link, and actually I'll put this link in the show notes to the documentation for the JMES path the CLI tool uses. It's absolutely fantastic. If you ever get stuck with filters or queries, it's valuable.
Where can we find these fantastic tools, John?
We can find them in the show notes at thecloudpod.net. And that's it for this week's episode. Here at the Cloud Pod, we strive to bring you the latest news regarding AWS, Azure and GCP, and we're here to help you navigate the world of cloud computing. If you have any questions, reach out to us on our website, thecloudpod.net, or tweet us with the hashtag #thecloudpod.